RJ? Cam? The fuck was that? Welcome back to Motorsport 101.
I'm going to be honest with you, Chief. On my chart of is this it? I don't see this race here. I don't see anything about this weekend here.
Yet we have to do a podcast on it anyway. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 428 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison, and MotoGP is back! Woo! Don't all cheer at once, you know.
It's what we've been waiting for this whole time.
Yeah, the last season in what we called season preview season. We're back. We're now fully up and running. And oh dear, what the hell was that weekend?
Cam, I gotta tell you something. On this chart, I'm seeing no mention of Mike Patton or his band Faith No More or the hit single Epic, because apparently this race was not it.
No, I am seeing their first single off of their more recent record, Motherfucker, though.
Yeah, that works. That definitely works.
Thank you for tuning into our semi-obscure American alternative metal podcast.
Yeah,
well, you know, it has to be said, this wasn't easy.
Yes, this week we'll be reviewing the latest album from Maneskin. Anyway, I kid.
Trey, you got me falling to pieces.
What else is new? In this episode of Motorsport 101, we're going to be talking all about MotoGP season opener in Portimao, the Portuguese Grand Prix. The first time we've had a European season opener, God, quite a while. I want to say maybe 2006 was the last time we had a European opener on two wheels. But yeah, we'll be getting into that over the course of the next hour or so, because we've got some shit to talk about, because bike racing has erupted in terms of the dialogue again.
Krakatoa!
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to try and lay these bag of snakes out as straight as we can and try and make sense of it all, because the most common sense thing we had about this whole weekend was that Francesco Bagnaia took the entire weekend and all 37 points that came with it. Everything else, on the other hand, was a dumpster fire. Marc Marquez causing an incident which has got the internet seething, moulding, looking for nuance, loopholes in the rules, a sprint race that's now effectively put 4 people on the shelf, including one that could have suffered a much, much worse fate. And we'll get to that later on in the show. But we have so much to break down over the course of this one. But first, let's get into our hosts. First up, RJ O'Connell. Hello, sir. How's it going?
Jason puts up an interesting point. What's longer coming out of this weekend? Chris Jericho's famous list from his last WWE run, or the injury list going into next week's Argentine Grand Prix?
Yes. That's the answer to the question. Yeah, this one, I'm calling it a tie. Yeah, like rider injury number 997, armbar, etc.
Hole number 998, arm pump.
I'm surprised you haven't had one of those yet this week. Well, apparently I did hear Raul Fernandez has got arm pump, but he won't be dealing with it till after Argentina. So that'll be fun. Also, we want to give a quick round of applause, because we didn't realize this until Jason mentioned it a couple days ago. His Sebring episode was his 200th appearance on the show. Cam Buckley, everybody.
What is wrong with you people? Why do you keep me here?
Well, you pay rent, and
how am I allowed to have this platform to spread my nonsense?
You pay rent, and you don't stink out the place. We've come to accept you. Congratulations, happy 200, my friend.
The bar is somewhere below Yamaha straight line speed.
Ooh, that's low.
Yeah, again, one of the more normal and conventional things that happened over the course of this weekend, Yamaha kind of struggled.
If you're on a Japanese Grand Prix bike right now, you are in the struggle bus.
You are going through it, to say the least.
Dude, Shinzo's looking up at this and frowning about the declining birth rate and the declining top speeds.
I am no longer asking. Fix the bikes.
Oh my god. RJ, what's gotten into you?
Motorsport101.com.
Yes. Check that out if you want some extra thoughts from me. Look, I had to do something with a race review that I've only ever done 3 times ever. I had to put an editor's note in it. Multiple. I've had to change this post. I got another one coming out on Marquez before the end of the week because there is so much shit to break down as a result of this incident. And basically, my overall vibe is this isn't really a Marc Marquez story. You'll have to see what I mean when we talk about it a bit more on the show. But if you want my full thoughts,
our favorite ever topic on this show, stewarding. Which I just can't comprehend. Why are we still talking about this when we fired Michael Massey?
We fixed stewarding,
and yet the stewarding keeps breaking.
I don't know. It's at this point.
Why would NASCAR allow this?
I know.
Motorsport_101 on Twitter.
Yeah. You can check us out on Instagram, Motorsport101pod. And if you want to follow us on our handles personally, you can at Dre_WTF1, CBuckley917, and at RJ O'Connell. As said, we're Motorsport101.com if you want some extra thoughts from yours truly on all the bullshit that went down in Portimao. And if you really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/Motorsport101. You can back us over there. $5 gets you early access to all of our episodes before they're released to the public. 10 gets you in the supporters club of our Discord server, where you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded. Shout out to Jason, who's listening in right now, who says 174 more appearances for Cam, and he could overtake King. Good luck, buddy. Sometime next year, I reckon.
Ryan Eric Kingsford can be found.
All right. It's time to announce our new sports car-centric podcast with myself and RJ. Name redacted here. It will be coming out at a redacted date and covering redacted series.
Sounds like fun.
I for one am just looking forward to just like scraping the bottom of the barrel for the most obscure GT3 derived championships we can find.
Excuse me, we are the authority on the Palanga 1006. That I can promise you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. We're not making fun of an event that should be regarded as a missing leg of the Triple Crown of endurance racing.
Gentlemen, we're getting distracted. Shall we talk about some bikes?
Let's talk about some bikes.
Please, no.
Welcome back to the biggest stage in motorcycle racing. What the fuck just happened? Well, from the top, it was a reasonably comfortable yet dominant weekend for the reigning world champion of MotoGP, Francesco Bagnaia, in Portugal. He took a narrow yet untouched win over the Aprilia of Maverick Vinales in second, followed by Marco Bezzecchi getting a second career top-flight podium in third. But the race was overshadowed by a nasty incident early on involving pole sitter Marc Marquez. Yes, you heard that right. Marc Marquez put his Repsol Honda on pole position for the feature race. Marquez was trying to make moves up at the front of it, but he locked his front tire and plowed into hometown hero Miguel Oliveira. Oliveira injured his leg.
Jorge Martin.
Oliveira injured his leg, and for his troubles, Marc Marquez hurt his hand. Oliveira hurt his leg, and Marquez hurt his hand. Regardless, Marc was originally given a double long lap penalty for net switch Argentine Grand Prix. But since he's been ruled unfit to race in Argentina, he wouldn't have had to serve the penalty because the notice that was given said it was just for that specific race. This Great Canyon of a loophole, which nobody noticed until now at Door to Sport, has just been closed today, so Marc Marquez now has to serve the penalty when he's fit to race. Great work, everybody. Wonderful.
Jesus Christ.
So they're both...
I think this reminds us of a great lesson in life. Never attribute to malice what can equally be attributed to incompetence.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. Trey, what'd you make of the race itself?
First and foremost, a quick update for those who haven't listened in by now, because every podcast is somebody's first. Marc Marquez is out of the Argentine Grand Prix this weekend. He will not be replaced. Turns out he broke a bone in his right thumb. They're going to give him every chance to recover for the Circuit of the Americas in 3 weeks' time. Miguel Oliveira was originally declared fit after the incident he was involved in, but further recovery detailed that he's actually a bit more hurt in said leg than anticipated, so he'll be missing Argentina as well.
That's not really surprising. He took a motorcycle to the back.
Yeah.
He took a motorcycle to the back.
That is not a good massage method.
And he was declared fit.
Well, it's primarily a bruise of the upper, I believe, right leg, but it looks like there is further damage in there as well. And also Jorge Martin, for his troubles, came away with a broken toe and later dumped the bike in the race because he basically couldn't have his foot on the peg.
Yeah, that's a problem. So, yeah, as it stands right now, Marc Marquez will not be replaced. We don't know on the status of the other potential replacements. We'll get to them in a minute because we got a lot to break down in that later on. Just bear with us on this one. But the race itself was fine. It didn't solve any of the problems that I've had with MotoGP in the last year and change. This, like, Francesco Bagnaia is him. We need to point this out first and foremost. He was sensational all weekend. Qualified second, won the sprint race, which we'll get to, just out-dueling Jorge Martin, who we all know is fast as all hell. And then in the race itself, it turns out Maverick Viñales came through and was the main threat to Bagnaia over the course of the race. And Maverick did what he's tried to do a lot of the time with these regulations. Try and manage his tyre, try to not let it overheat, back off a little bit, and then go for one last full frontal assault at the end. And Bagnaia was able to resist everything that Viñales could throw at him. It's the old Andy Roddick phrase, I went to the bathroom and threw the kitchen sink at him, but Roger went back and got his tub.
Well, the thing is that was kind of the general theme, other than a battle we will talk about later. No one could get close to one another because these bikes they can't race anymore. Let's just rip that bandage off right now. I was very surprised. Viñales he came through the field. The factory Aprilia's qualified pretty poorly. And then we're able to come through the field pretty well. And Viñales, for what it's worth, was actually pretty much be able to match Bagnaia all the way home. He just could never get in a position where he could get close enough to pass.
Pretty much. And that was, without question for me, Maverick's best weekend on an Aprilia.
Absolutely.
He was excellent all weekend long. Actually, he looks like he might have actually worked on his starts because both his starts were excellent in the sprint and in the main race, especially in the main race. He had an excellent start, got through the field early, got into his rhythm quickly, and was right there with Bagnaia all the way through. And that's about as much as you could reasonably ask for Aprilia here. That was an excellent
This is the Maverick Viñales we were promised.
Yeah, I hope it comes up more often because if this really is kind of like the last chance saloon for Maverick Viñales as a rider, really, for me. Like he's in a contract here with Aprilia right now, and like he's in a good place. He's looked after. He and they get along very well. This should be it for Maverick. This was an excellent weekend for the man, and Top Gun was flying high on this one, and that was one of the highlights of the race. It was good to see a surprising name up at the front again, and that was cool.
And Marta Bezzecchi can ride a little.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 2.7 seconds off the win on last year's bike.
No, last year's bike was pretty good.
Yeah. The Lord was also doing some work. KTM, Lord knows what KTM was up to.
KTM, we will talk about them. We will need to talk about their second team a little bit later on. But the factory KTMs had their token weight. Are they good now, race? Right off the bat,
right away. And Jack Miller beat Brad Binder on debut.
Jack Miller legitimately looked like a threat for pole until he dumped the bike on his second to last. The second to last run for everyone in qualifying.
Miller's got some pace.
I will say he did find a way to kill his tires in 9 laps in the sprint race, which is honestly, I just put my hand up and say I'm impressed. But yeah, he looked fantastic. And Brad Binder, well, he passed some fucking bikes. Word to Ryan Eric King.
14th to 6th, despite having a major case of whiplash.
Yeah, he's riding badly hurt right now. He did a fantastic job this weekend to bring anything home.
I get the feeling if you just tuned in for the feature race, like you had gotten a messy incident at the top, and without knowing any of the other concepts before it, you would have been like, okay, that was a pretty decent race.
Well, we do have to talk about something before we get to the sprint. Now I'm gonna take all my fan gear off. I'm gonna throw it in the fire here. You know, if Marc Marquez wants to do what he did on Sunday, well, he can get in the catacombs if he wants to act like a fucking bonehead.
At best, that was a boneheaded bit of braking. For those who don't know exactly what happened, he is braking towards turn 2. He locks his front tire, and has to release the brake. And at that point, there is no stopping that motorcycle, and he just clatters into Miguel Oliveira's back. And he had the whole shot, Miggy. It's easy to forget. He was leading through the first couple of laps of this race. And yeah, he got speared in the back again. At first, Miguel was declared fit somehow, which is kind of crazy in its own right. As mentioned, Martin got clattered as well. He broke his toe in the incident, but was also he was declared fit. He should be fine for Argentina, thankfully. Luckily, a toe isn't quite so serious in bike racing, but it was a horrible accident. You can actively see, and there's great pictures of this on the internet already, the Portuguese fans swearing, booing, and gesticulating towards Marquez as he rides back to the paddock.
Yo, Dre, give me that hierarchy of Portuguese athletes that you were telling me about offline, because Miguel Oliveira's popularity is astonishing if you put it in these terms.
I've asked many a Portuguese fan about, I've asked them, is he really this popular? Because I remember when they first rode here, I think it was a couple of years ago, in 2021, I want to say. I asked, a couple of Portuguese fans, a couple of them listen to this show. Daniel, shout out to you, buddy. Is he really that popular in Portugal? And the response I got was, Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously football legend, probably the most recognizable athlete in the world. Bruno Fernandes, Manchester United captain, and again, elite level footballer. Miguel Oliveira, in that order. That's how big a celebrity. That's how big a celebrity Miguel Oliveira is. He gets mobbed at this round every year. He has to hire extra security when he enters and leaves the track during race weekend.
He arrives like Goldberg about to wrestle for the World Heavyweight Championship.
Oh, yeah, armed escort. Oh, yeah, full-on Halloween Havoc vibes here. Yeah, Miggy is that popular here. So to take out Miguel Oliveira in a MotoGP race, it's a bit like punching somebody's sainted mother. Understandably, the Portuguese fans were livid. I was watching on BT Sports coverage, and biking legend Sylvain Guintoli quite funnily said, and I quote, he's going to have to leave this track on a helicopter. After the race was said and done, people were foaming at the mouth in anger over this.
And honestly, can't blame them. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about this incident, and I mean, wasn't great, was it?
No,
and the thing is, it wasn't even an overtaking attempt. It initially, and that was the initial thought, and then you watch the replay, it's just it's just out of control on the bike.
Yeah,
and as Mark put it, they're having to brake that late on the Honda to not be 10th or 12th. And while that is an explanation, and I can understand it, it's not really an excuse.
It's not
justification.
No, it's not a justifiable reason to ride a motorcycle that way. I get it. We all know that Honda is fundamentally flawed. We've God help us, we've talked about it to the moon and back.
Well, that's the duality of Mark, where the previous day, I mean, he looked like the bike looked like I was going to break in half on his pole lap.
Yeah, he was
completely. He was at 15 tenths all the way around the lap.
That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem, though.
And he was towing Enea Bastianini all the way around the lap, and he still barely outqualified Pecco for pole. Yeah. And that's amazing. But then you are in a situation where, and anyone who's played a racing game, anyone who's done, track days, if you're around other people at speed, you're not riding to the absolute limit and potential. You're not racing to that limit. You have to be conscious and aware of the people around you. And in this case, in a vacuum, does that braking work if you're alone? Maybe. But not when you're in a pack of other riders. And Mark had already had an issue trying to get the bike stopped on the second lap of the race where he basically had to do the same thing, basically had to pick the bike up. And he and Jorge Martin almost rode through each other about 3 separate times in the space of 2 corners.
Yeah.
It was a wild opening scramble until everybody just came out of it, the way that they did.
Yeah. And again, look, if you're Marc Marquez right now, you're back physically, okay? You have nothing to prove. You are an 8-time MotoGP world champion. 8-time motorcycle world champion, 6 MotoGP titles. There is a distinction. Mm-hmm. There is nothing to play for right now. If he could have brought that, he got a podium in the sprint, which we'll talk about a little bit later. If he brings home top 7, that's an unbelievable result.
He is still so much faster than everybody else on a Honda right now. And
he destroyed Mir and Rins. Destroyed them. And Alex Rins was finishing last year looking like the best motorcycle racer on the planet.
Mir is a past world champion.
Mir is a past world champion, and he got seal clubbed.
Yeah.
Bring the friggin' points home until Calex brings whatever they're going to bring. That has been moved up, so it looks like that's going to come in actually middle of April for Jerez.
For Jerez, yeah.
Until then, you're trying to win on a bike that your abilities are great, but they are not capable of bringing this bike wins. Because I don't think anyone can. Take the points. You do not need to be riding at 15 tenths in a pack.
Look, I'm as big a Marquez fan as anybody. And
it was boneheaded.
And look, I need to make one thing absolutely clear here. Marc Marquez is not a stupidly dirty rider. A lot of people seem to have
people
this...
want to say he is. And there were so many of them this weekend.
It's like people were waiting for an incident like this to reestablish their hate for what Marc Marquez is as a bike rider. I've been following Marc Marquez's entire career. In the top flight, he's had 2 days where I would genuinely say he's gone way over the line. This one, and I would say Argentina in 2016.
18
it was quite.
It was 18. I would say the last time he just cleaned someone the fuck out was, I would say Silverstone 21 can go on there because he just cleaned Jorge Martin out.
Yeah, that's a fair one.
Just being over aggressive, but the answer lies somewhere in the middle of much further towards. Look, there is a lot of aggressive riding in MotoGP.
We have to be now.
You have to be now because you have to get everything that you can get now. There was next to no passing other than the clinic Zarco put on late in this race, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There was like a second gap between most bikes other than that fight for the podium. The fight for 4th behind Bezzecchi, who was on the podium. Sorry. But how would I put this? Every single thing he does is going to be under massive scrutiny because people want to see the dude fail. They have since Valentino Rossi was throwing conspiracy theories around in 2015 in a press conference. And that permanently etched into people's minds that Marc Marquez is a dirty rider. I don't think this was dirty. I think this was
an unfortunate accident.
It was a mistake. I'm not going to call it a small mistake, but a mistake that ended up with very severe consequences, given the size of the mistake.
The double long lap penalty is completely fine.
I would have been fine with a pit lane start, honestly. I would have gone one further. I think the long lap penalty or the pit lane start is fine. I think the people calling for race bans is a bit rich. Given I don't even think this was the most egregious incident on the weekend. We'll get to that when we talk about the sprints. But it's not sustainable. Look, he broke his hand. I mean, it's not a major injury. He'll be back for Coda. He'll probably be fine. But it's not sustainable. He needs to go back to his 2016 self of just take the points and see what Kalex brings you in Jerez.
Yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, a double long lap I thought was fine. If you gave Mir a long lap penalty for a lunge during the sprint that he had no chance of making. A hopeless lunge. It was a hopeless lunge. It was irresponsible ride, and he was given the long lap penalty. That was clearly what with Marquez was clearly a step above that. So I felt like a double long lap was fine in a vacuum. The problem I have with it is not the DLLP in a vacuum. The problem is that again, what counts as a penalty? We don't know. Simon Patterson for the race wrote a very good piece about this, and he leaned towards what Cam was saying about it being maybe a pit lane start because he thought of Sam Lowes when he wiped out Jorge Navarro in Austria in Moto2 a couple of years ago, and he was black flagged from the race and given a pit lane start for the next round. And it's on that level. I can understand. If you say to me it's a pit lane start, I wouldn't argue with you. I think that's completely understandable. But then we've also got incidents like Taka Nakagami last year, who at the time, let's not forget, people were calling for Taka's head after literally headbutting a motorcycle
himself. A head that almost wasn't on his shoulders anymore after that crash.
Yeah, Alex Rins was seething with rage after that incident, calling for a race ban. I think he called the stewards a cunt at one point. He was so angry about it.
He's the one who got his wrist broken out of the whole ordeal.
And there was no disciplinary action from the
There was no penalty.
When Fabio Quartararo dive-bombed the shit out of Hellacious Espargaro last year, he was given the long lap penalty. Hellacious Espargaro, who was calling for Marc Marquez to get a race ban, said that Fabio Quartararo shouldn't have been penalised. We're all a bunch of fucking hypocrites here. May I just point this out? We have no idea what constitutes a penalty. And this is the problem. Apparently, the double long lap was an agreed-upon sanction in a handshake meeting with the riders and the stewards before the weekend started on Thursday. Marquez said that during his post-race press conference.
Dre, how many times on the show do we have to talk about handshake agreements regarding regulations?
All the fucking time, apparently, because this is the second time
Every
I've done
episode.
it in a week. It's the second time in a week I've had to do it.
My favorite recurring characters in universes. Motorsport 101 has handshake deals. In Bright Sun Films' Abandoned series, it's the 2008 recession, and Eddie Lampert, formerly of Sears Kmart.
Yeah, etc. This is another case where immediately a handshake deal for a certain thing to be interpreted a certain way in the regulations immediately comes under fire because it has to get implemented and it melts down the second it arrives.
Yeah, because, since then, Razlan Rosali, who runs the RNF Aprilia team, said they want a harsher punishment. Jorge Martin, understandably, was like, Marquez is a repeat offender. He needs to be more harshly punished. And Martin's got good reason to be, given he's been collected twice by Marquez in the last 2 years or so. Well,
then you have riders like Bez who are going to bat for Marquez.
Yeah,
it's ultimately if you have people on both sides, in your own paddock, the answer probably does lie somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
and I think this penalty is that kind of middle ground, but. Well, RNF, you agreed to the handshake deal, and then when the handshake deal ended up coming for your neck, you want to change it. And understandably so. Miguel Oliveira got cleaned the fuck out.
End the fucking handshake agreements, first and foremost. You
need to establish in writing what does and does not constitute a given level of penalty.
Yeah, and I know there will always be a level of subjectivity that comes with that because no two incidents are ever the same. But if you've caused a severe incident that has ruined multiple riders' days, including your own, and it was deemed dangerous, there needs to be a clear level of establishment as to what that constitutes. Because MotoGP hasn't got an excuse. Like back in the days of like a decade ago when it was Marco Simoncelli that was often accused of going over that line, like all we had really was the drive-through penalty. Now we have the long lap penalty. At one point we had time penalties. We can now give out double long lap penalties. You've now got pit lane starts. The book is more flexible to adapt towards these situations. There isn't an excuse anymore. Like you need
to that effect, Ray. Another rider got cleaned out this weekend and had their shoulder broken by an over-aggressive overtake, and it was not penalized at all.
So what's a penalty then? Like, I'm not saying
and I wouldn't call for Marini's head for a race ban either. I don't think that incident constituted that either.
No,
that's not what I'm saying.
I think a lot of people want to use Marquez's reputation as a stick to beat him with in this instance. One, I don't think Marquez is anywhere near as dirty as some of these people say he is. And I would also say that, do you know how far down the road you've got to get to as a bike rider to be talking about race bans? And we're talking like Carol Haneke level bullshit.
Talking grabbing other people's brake handles.
Yeah, like, it's not ideal, to say the least. Look, like I said, in a vacuum, the penalty was fine. I have two major takeaways to come away from all of this. Number one is that the stewarding needs to be addressed. And I've said this time and time again, that MotoGP stewards are actually worse than Formula Ones at the moment.
By a mile and a stretch.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, the FIA are no angels, but you can see they've actively tried to make an effort to improve the situation. MotoGPs are still horrifically bad. Second of all, Marc Marquez does not need to be fucking Russell Westbrook anymore, okay? Like, Marc Marquez needs to know...
He does not need to be jacking 40 shots a game and turning his knees into a fine mist.
He doesn't have anything to prove to anyone anymore. You are one of the greatest...
trying to prove it to himself.
You are the most naturally talented bike rider I have ever seen in my life. You have got nothing to prove to Honda, to yourself, or to anyone. You don't need to play hero ball anymore. Like, you take the points and see what you can get. This season is still not lost, in my opinion. We are still talking about a world champion who left the door way the fuck open this time last year. Okay? Like,
we've had one race.
Yeah.
Pecco has proved himself exceedingly vulnerable in the past.
Right.
To the point where last season, which should have been a walkover, ended up being anything but.
Yeah.
Some of that's on Pecco, some of that's on Ducati.
Yeah, you gave Fabio Quartararo genuine hope he could have won the world title last year.
You gave him a 91-point lead.
Yeah,
and coming back from 91 down to win it is a testament to Pecco's abilities. And he's look. I was the one singing his praises first on the show, way back when, back before he broke his leg. Jesus, but he's not infallible. Mark needs to get his head right. And look, you might have that calyx frame in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Get what you can get.
Reassess then.
And then reassess. Because that is, I mean, as it's been shown, like, Brodel is not going to replace him. That's for a very good reason, because that calyx frame is supposedly coming into Honda's workshop to be tested privately that same week.
Give Stefan Brodel like a weekend vacation in Argentina. Don't have him go run around the track.
That's literally the point. What is worth it more for Honda? A complete technical reset on their bike that fucking needs it? Or watching Stefan Brodel flounder around in 20th, watching the other three Honda riders finish fringe top 10 to just outside like they did this weekend, because the other three Hondas finished in a big block. Alex Rins was winning races to end last year.
On a Suzuki.
He was scraping the top 10 on this Honda.
Not good.
And Mark put it on pole. That's how much he's overriding this thing.
Yeah.
And he can't. It's not that he can't. It's that it's not sustainable in race conditions.
No. And I get that can be difficult for a man who's lived his career on 11 tenths over the line and basically rewrote.
Marc Marquez can do 11 tenths all day. Whatever he was at this weekend, I've never seen him really abusing a bike the way he was this weekend, and it's too much.
Yeah. Can I be a mediocre white man and play devil's advocate for a second? And
absolutely, go for it. Random ESPN executive number 3.
Marc Marquez has to prove that he can still perform at a high level after the sequence of injuries. I get why he's pushing this hard.
But again, that's an explanation, and I get it, but it's not an excuse.
Indeed.
If he needs to prove it to himself, fine. But prove it to yourself when you've got something to play for later this year. Not when your bike is fundamentally incapable of getting wins.
But that's the thing. People who say that Marc Marquez only dominates when he has a good bike in front of him aren't going to care that he has a terrible bike all of a sudden. They're just going to hold that as ammunition to say Marc Marquez cannot win on a bike that's less than perfect.
He won every championship from 16 to 19 on a bus.
Yeah. He's had the best bike in MotoGP for 1 out of his 6 world titles. Anyone who thinks otherwise is kidding themselves. He has nothing to prove to anybody but himself. And the problem is that he can win a championship by playing conservatively. He's just choosing not to. And that's the problem.
He proved it in 2016. He watched the Yamaha duo self-destruct.
The Luigi wins by doing nothing 2016 campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Well, shit. I mean, he rode to the point where he broke the other 2 late on. But even so, I mean, he won't even get the chance to do that this year either way, because watching the teammate duo thing meltdown might not even be in play here.
Nope, because let's
talk about the sprint.
We finally got it. We got the first ever MotoGP sprint race as part of the new weekend structure. Within it, we got an entertaining, aggressive 12-lap race where Francesco Bagnaia won ahead of Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez. But there was another nasty incident. Luca Marini wiped out Enea Bastianini during the race with the new factory Ducati rider breaking his shoulder blade as a result, ruling him out of the Grand Prix, the Argentine Grand Prix, and possibly beyond. If you combine that with a tense atmosphere during the weekend already, with Pol Espargaro very lucky to be alive after
injured,
clattering an outside wall with his bike in very close company during practice on Friday, it was pretty clear that many of the riders weren't happy. And Marc Marquez, I remember him, we just talked about him. Marc Marquez even mentioned that 5-letter U word again. A riders union. That's 11 words. Just a union. A union of riders. After this weekend was all said and done, 4 top-class riders are confirmed to be out of Argentina, nearly 20% of the grid. That's Marc Marquez, Miguel Oliveira, Enea Bastianini, and Pol Espargaro. And we haven't even touched the drivers in the lower categories. There are riders that are also going to miss races. It happens. Dre, what did you make of the sprint? Was it worth it all?
There's a lot.
You can't open the debate with the hardest question of all.
No. Well, I will try because I like a challenge. First and foremost, on behalf of everybody here, get well soon, Pol Espargaro, because that was a utterly horrendous accident. That could have been fatal. That was.
We say it with no hyperbole. He is very lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
And even saying that, he badly fractured his jaw. He has multiple spinal injuries. Thankfully, none of them neurological, so nothing that would risk paralyzing him. Among other injuries, I mean, you watch that bike. You watch the bike following him into the gravel, and you think, "Oh no." I mean, and thanks to Dorna for while he was at the side of the track for about 20 minutes receiving IVs, showing the first half of the replay, realizing how bad it was, and then cutting it before you see him go all the way down. And then showing the full run later. Thanks, guys. That was really pleasant to watch.
I don't know why Dorna still fucking does that, by the way. It's fucking horrendous. Please stop. You don't get
gladiatorial nature and all that.
You don't get any bonus points. And if anyone out in the director's box is getting a boner by replaying these near fatal accidents,
probably should know their job.
I don't see what you're doing this for.
Yeah, we lay into NBC when they do this with IndyCar wrecks.
Yeah, like
you are the sole promoter of the sport, and you're doing this. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
look,
I signed up for your free trial, and you charged me before it was over. Anyway,
yeah. Look, I watched Jason Dupasquier die. That's all I need to say in response to that.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I want to move on because there's a lot I want to unpack here. First and foremost, the sprint race in of itself, in a vacuum, and I will backtrack a little bit here, so bear with me here. But the sprint itself was great. I would be lying to you if I wasn't entertained because it was great. It was exactly what I think Dorna, and as a fan, I can't lie, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be in a good way. It was a more aggressive version of a Grand Prix. Riders were more aggressive, they took more risks, and they ran more aggressive tire strategies to try and get, like Jack Miller, as Cam alluded to.
Jack Miller out here on the soft on a KTM strategy. His body is a machine that turns fresh tires into destroyed tires.
Mincemeat. And like
Mercedes 2013 looking ass.
And we had a fantastic fight between, Marc Marquez, who pulled off a double overtake to get on the podium. Miguel Oliveira, who pushed too far and went right on the final lap.
The duality of Marc Marquez being absolutely perfectly judged in his aggression in the sprint, which is a more aggressive race, and then barreling into two riders in the main event.
Amazing. No notes. And then Bagnaia narrowly beating Jorge Martin in a close running fight because Martin had just overdone it on his tyres a little bit in that one. And, Bagnaia is still him, as I mentioned earlier. The sprint in a vacuum was great. I would be lying to you if I said it wasn't. But, and this is a big but, as Cam alluded to, and Luca Marini, who crashed 4 times over the weekend, crashed in the sprint.
Luca Marini had one of the worst weekends, without getting severely injured, one of the worst weekends I can remember for a top-class rider. He was a mess this weekend.
Yeah, binned it at the bottom hairpin and collected Bastianini in the process, broke his shoulder blade. Good news is for Bastianini, he doesn't require surgery on the broken shoulder blade. He'll be starting rehab for that on Monday. There's a chance he can make Austin. So, it's the best possible news Enea could have gotten in the grand scheme of things. So
yeah, because for those who are uninitiated, shoulder blade, MotoGP riders have ride through a lot of shit. That is one of those things that you can't really ride through functionally.
No chance.
And it's too much of a risk to the integrity of your shoulder to actually try and ride through it. So
nope.
Shoulders immobilized. We'll kind of see where he is. We know he's out for Argentina. We'll see what he gets at Austin.
Yeah.
But Marini just fired it up the inside. Death taxes Ducati tucks the front. I don't get to say that too often these days, but it did happen. That's probably what I would term as the worst incident of the weekend as far as boneheadedness, because he just cleaned Bastianini the fuck out.
Yeah.
Again, no penalty awarded for this one, which was a bit confusing in the context of the weekend.
Yeah, it's a weird one. The point I was going to get to here, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit here, so again, bear with me here, but the way this played out, and don't get me wrong, like I said, so I thought the sprint was great. The way it has changed the entire structure of a race weekend has indirectly led to 4 riders being on the shelf. Now, let me explain. FP4, which we now get on a Saturday afternoon before qualifying, is now scrapped. We now only have a 10-minute warm-up on Sunday morning because they have to get their new hero walk in, which is, track parade, selfies, autographs, accessibility. Nice stuff, right? Whatever. On top of that, FP3 on a Saturday morning is now completely pointless. It serves no purpose because it's now too early in the morning to have any race sims run. And qualifying is now already established because they've changed the rules now where Q1 and Q2 are now determined by FP2 times rather than FP3 times combined. Yep. So now, whether you make
it's
Q1
made
or
the session completely redundant.
Yeah, FP3 is now redundant. It serves no purpose other than making sure your bike is working. It serves no purpose. Every weekend is now maximum intensity right from the start because now you can't just go easy in FP1, make sure your bike's working, maybe try a few setup changes here and there. You are now on it right from the start because you've now only got an hour and a half of running before your Q1 or Q2 spot is locked in. It's now turned Q1 and Q2 into glorified qualifying sessions.
Yeah, you are doing not even qualifying sims, you're doing actual qualifying runs. Pretty much the entire time. You were at maximum attack for now, 90% of the weekend?
It is now incredibly intense. And
this reminds me of when, at peak NASCAR, NASCAR at its peak, they have qualifying on a Friday after one practice session.
Yeah.
Well, and what it ended up triggering, Pol's incident, which was one of those too much rear brake high sides, came because he was doing qualifying sims really too late in the day. We've spoken at length in the show about how sensitive the tires are to the weather conditions 500 miles away at this point. And he just got it wrong and was punished massively for it. And don't get me wrong, this is motorcycle racing. It kind of comes with the territory,
of course,
but it means that it's just all attack all the time. I talked about Marquez with his incident at 15 tenths. You now have to be at 10 tenths all the way through the weekend, or you are missing out.
Yeah, there is no practice. Isn't really practice now. Everything now matters, and this is the consequence. And this is ironic because Stefano Domenicali was down there this weekend, and he confusingly talked about making free practice sessions mean something. He's been talking about that since last year and trying to do that. Now, we don't know whether he was talking about MotoGP or F1. The interview kind of lacks context, so I don't want to get too much into it right now. But this is what Dorna wanted to do. This was the end game. They wanted everything to matter, and now everything matters. And there is a drawback that comes with that, because Pol Espargaro wrecked himself in an FP2 qualifying run on a cooling track towards the end of the day in a ruthless situation where your qualifying spot is now determined in a glorified qualifying session on Friday evening.
Yep. And he had, I reiterate, he is lucky to be alive. I am blown away at actually just the fact that he's even been awake. He has, Alicia has been posting a couple pictures in the hospital with him. He had surgery on his jaw today as a time of recording. And you know what? Watching a bike follow a rider into a gravel trap, I watched Louis Salon die.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't feel like watching that again.
No, I don't either.
And again, this is motorcycle racing. This is, look, even you ride a motorcycle on a motorway out in public and you're in danger. It comes with the territory. But it has turned every moment of a MotoGP weekend into all risk, all reward.
Yeah,
these guys are not paid. Yeah. What do we say about racing riders and racing drivers? They are not paid to dawdle around. They are paid to go out and push the limit. And now they have reason to push the limit every minute of a weekend.
Yeah, we haven't even touched the fact, what seems like the obvious one, which is with the sprints, you're adding more opportunities for riders to get hurt.
You've just introduced a second first lap collision opportunity.
Yeah.
We saw it last year a couple times in F1 where people were getting wiped out in sprints because there is an opportunity there. And this one doesn't even set the grid for the primary race.
Nope.
But it is worth points all the way down, half points to half the positions.
Down to ninth, actually. So it
Yeah.
was a little bit more than half.
A little bit more than half. If you can get to the top 9, hey, that's points. They matter.
Yeah.
And it's just it's adding so much more risk to what is already a very risky sport by nature.
I don't think he'll mind me using his name here because he's a good friend and he's a good friend of the show. I got into it with Kevin Walsh. Kevin's a big fan of ours and he's a friend of the show and he's in our Discord, and we don't take this shit personally. We are two very heated, very passionate bike fans who from two different sides of the aisle, and he's been a big proponent for having sprint races, and that's understandable. I get the argument as to why they might work, and I said to him and a casual mate of ours on Twitter, at what point does this move beyond the inherent danger of just it being bike racing and into the grounds of this is an unavoidable and unnecessary amount of risk? I don't know where that line is. I don't think anybody knows where that line is, and that in itself is a problem.
It's ambiguous by nature.
And if you're adding 21 race starts to a calendar year and you're inviting your riders to be more aggressive, not just because of the fact that this is a sprint race and there's only 12, or it's only a half distance race roughly. The fact as well that these bikes are genuinely incredibly difficult to overtake with now, and that is going to invite riders to take on more risk. Look, I know Johan Mir, right? I've seen his entire career from the time he was in Moto 3. He would not have gone for that lunge in a Grand Prix scenario. 100%. No,
it was absolutely. It was if gap bike in the worst sense of the word. Like he had no chance to make that pass. Thankfully, Fabio was able to stay upright, and Mir crashed himself out, and he got a long lap for it.
Yeah, I mean, he would never try that in a Grand Prix. Is the point I'm getting at? He's trying it because
he's never been a rider to try that kind of risk when overtaking someone. Yeah, it's. I was talking about Kevin with it as well in DMs on Twitter, and again, this is motorcycle racing. Shit happens, but you've now added in 35% more opportunity for shit happening. You've doubled the first lap potential for shit happening, and you've now integrated the practice sessions into shit possibly happening, and shit did happen.
This is not to say that car racing is not dangerous, but because
there are levels to it.
But there's levels to it. In a car, you're seated in kind of a carbon fiber crash structure. On a bike, you are the crash structure.
Exactly. I mean, Dre, you and I kind of talked about it that unfortunately in Formula One at this point, and really stuff like that, LMP1, NASCAR, injuries are 0 or 100. You are either gravely injured and probably never going to race again if you're lucky, or you get out and you go home and you talk to Red Bull Catering about a sandwich.
Sure. Pheasants apparently.
God. In motorcycle racing, there is every range of every kind of injury, between something very minor, a bruise, a broken bone in the thumb, to you not getting up and you ending at the side of a racetrack.
The line that sticks out to me most, and thanks for Jason for reminding me of this, is Hellacious Espargaro. Hellacious Espargaro, and we all know.
Quote of the year contender, by the way.
Oh, yeah, and we all know, look, Hellacious is the longest running rider in the top flight. He is the veteran of the paddock. He's the only man left in this field who raced an 800. This is his 19th year in Grand Prix motorcycle racing, and Hellacious hit Simon Patterson with a line that stuck out to me like a sore thumb, where he said, quote, "Gladiator is my favorite movie. Do you think those guys wanted to be there?"
Quote of the year, unquestioned. That, you couldn't encompass it more perfectly.
Mortal Kombat is such a cool game. You think any one of those dudes want to be there?
Personally, I could do without my spine. But look, like, Hellacious is the longest tenured person here. He's the last man to ride an 800, of course. He has paid his dues in this sport.
He's seen
in every way you could imagine. And if anyone is qualified to speak on the matter, he is.
His brother almost died this weekend.
Yeah, he's holding his brother's hand in a hospital in a picture. Basically describing him as the Incredible Hulk for surviving that crash.
If anyone's allowed to have their heart on their sleeve on this weekend after seeing their brother airlifted to a hospital, it's him.
Without question.
Yeah, I mean, the man was getting emergency IVs at the side of the track for what felt like a half hour.
Yeah,
as I thought, this is a bit more serious than just your average crash. And what this feeds into, to kind of talk to our next point, is a feeling between all of the riders this weekend. And it's been snowballing for a while, and we've touched on it on the show, that the riders increasingly feel like they have no voice in the sport, and that the powers that be, in this case being FIM and Dorna, are basically doing shit to do shit regardless of how it affects the riders and teams. And they feel very powerless to do anything about it.
There are instances where racing athletes sometimes don't have their best interest in mind when they speak about it, but this is not one of those cases. This is something where they genuinely feel like their lives are at risk.
RJ, when we lost Louis Salam and the talk was about changing the track, Valentino Rossi came out in the media immediately, was screaming bloody murder about doing anything about the track.
Yeah, that's why I kind of feel like it's been talked about. I don't know if they're going to come down to enough common ground to get like a proper rider union together.
But that is kind of the thing here. Marc Marquez was on record being all for sprints prior to this weekend. More racing good, which seems to be a lot of the opinion out of the positive side of sprints. And hey, to kind of backtrack a little bit, I agree with Trey. The sprint in a vacuum was very entertaining to watch. But when he's the one talking about a riders union, when Enea Bastianini is openly talking about a riders union, when the powers that be at Dorna are having to get their elbows out and publicly put down union talk, there is smoke here, however small it might be.
Yeah, and look, I openly admit I was fully on RJ's side of the aisle when it came to this conversation. I cited the Salam incident and how, like, on one side of the defense you had people like Valentino Rossi, on the other side you had someone like Bradley Smith, who I've poured his heart out on BT Sport the weekend that happened, because he was the rider's representative in terms of safety, and Bradley, like, his head was good. I think that's where he became bold. I think his head, his
melted,
head caught fire.
He melted down over that, and with full justification to melt down over it, because we just watched a rider die in a corner that had been complained about. And to feed back into this, the primary thing that really did Paul in his incident and hurt Fabio Di Gianantonio and hurt Brad Binder when they were testing here was because this track is not fit for purpose for motorcycles, because its gravel traps use far too large of a stone type, and they are raked in a way that is primarily to stop a car. And I've talked about this a little bit on this podcast before, but when we get into discussions about tracks that both F1 and motorcycle racing series use, you always have to hit that balance, because you can scream all fucking day about asphalt runoffs in Formula One being, they're not punishing enough. Well, asphalt runoffs save people's lives on bikes because they give people a chance to decelerate. You're not a car flying off into the gravel trap. You are a person heading at a wall. And in this case, this gravel was just having bikes and people skip across its surface straight towards walls. And this has been talked about for 4 years regarding this track, and nothing has been done. Portimao has been completely silent on it. Dorna has ignored rider safety concerns. And it just feels like, to me, regarding the dirty U word, one incident isn't doing this. It's just snowballing and snowballing a little bit more every time we have one of these discussions, and that's how it starts. Not the union proper, but the discussions around it, and the narrative starts around Dorna just in brazen defiance of rider safety in this case.
Like I said, was on that aisle until Marquez this weekend said that, yeah, I think we might need a union and we need a lawyer to represent us. Because let's not forget, the riders were not consulted before this sprint mode or the sprint race feature, which is a huge fucking adjustment to the entire sport.
The riders are the crux of it. They're the ones racing. We've added 35% onto their workload, a very physical workload, because you're racing a 300 horsepower carbon fiber missile. All the way through the year. We've added a second race start to every race through the year. I mean, Formula One, to that effect, they knew they weren't going to get away with putting a sprint on every weekend because the teams are running, the inmates are running the asylums with the teams, and the teams would have lost their fucking minds.
In a cost cap era, absolutely.
Yeah, who at the FIA and FOM are subsidizing those power units, those parts you're consuming, the tires necessary to run additional mileage. But I talked about this a little bit before this show directly. It's very weird how MotoGP is run right now, where Dorna has absolute authority over the sporting side of the regulations. They are the only ones with any power. They can tell the riders to go fuck themselves all day long. They can tell the teams, if you don't like it, you don't need to be here. While at the same time, Dorna has zero power over the technical regulations because they need unanimous agreements from the teams, and they're never going to agree on it because no one is ever going to vote to get their own inbuilt advantage banned. And they are simultaneously the complete lack of control on the technical side and the absolute control on the sporting side feel like they're tearing the sport asunder. And the riders are the ones who are caught in the middle.
It just feels like a very tense time to be in bike racing at the moment. It feels like...
Who's happy right now? Besides Pecco Bagnaia.
Pecco Bagnaia's happy.
The sports bosses are delighted. The sprint was an overriding success for them. Right?
I mean...
I think so.
It feels like it's split everyone right down the middle.
I'm not happy that we're going back. What we're going to have is... We're going to have a depleted grid at Argentina if we don't have everybody getting replaced that's hurt.
I mean, Dre...
And the last time we saw that was pre-CRT era 2011.
Yeah, and we know why that race has a C next to it. Dre, are the bosses happy right now? Because attendance is in the fucking toilet for a few races.
Yeah, apparently 9,000 down on last year, 67k at Portimao this weekend. They had 76 last year.
Why isn't this generation of riders captivating audiences the way they used to as the sport goes behind more and more expensive paywalls and ticket prices jump up more and more? Can't figure it out.
Yeah. And the irony in it is that they keep copying everything. They are down apocalyptic to try and copy anything they can from Formula One.
Down to the fucking theme music.
They have theme music now.
Yeah.
They always had a theme music. They had a theme song that was good for so long.
So did Speed on F1, and it was the best soundtrack to every 3 a.m. wake up.
They had the simple 8-note jingle, and it worked. They never needed to have their own, like, orchestral theme. It's ripping a page straight out of Formula One's book. Look, you know what's funny as well? MotoGP had the Lightbox intro style before, but it wasn't actually a theme they used for the races. It was a season opener graphic that they used to put in the video games. And now that's become the full theme. And they had that like 5 years before F1 copied them, ironically. But like at the same time, it's...
But Dre...
Yeah.
Here's my overarching point. They are down atrocious to try and copy anything they can off of Formula One. Formula One just burned its entire regulation set to the ground to try and improve the on-track product. And, well, other than the fact that Red Bull are whooping that ass, generally speaking, it's worked.
Yeah.
And yet in MotoGP, I can't remember a race where people had a second gaps between bikes.
Yeah, just unable
Maverick
to
Vinales, who had phenomenal pace in this race, he couldn't even get close enough to think about a lunge on Pecco.
That race played exactly into Maverick Vinales' hands. It was if you wanted to give Maverick Vinales a blueprint to win a MotoGP race, which he's done 9 times before, that was exactly the sort of race for him to do it. Couldn't get there.
Yeah, he couldn't even get close. I think the closest he ever got was about 0.6, and there was just no more in it. He had to back off to calm his front tire down because these front tires are made of toothpicks and chewing gum. The only battling we got, Dre, was the fight for fourth and Johan Zarco, who again might be the best motorcycle racer on earth, except when he's in a position to win. Just putting on a show late on.
Past 3 dudes on the final lap to go from 7th to 4th, including shoving Alex Marquez on the penultimate corner.
Oh my! Alex Marquez, what a great weekend!
Indeed, first weekend on the Duke, 5th place.
I felt so bad for Ryan. I felt so bad for Ryan that he couldn't celebrate that first podium.
It'll come. But I mean, you said it as well, RJ. Like, can I go selfish Brit for just a second here? Forgive me for just a moment because I'm the only British guy left. All
right. Give him his fish and chips.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Like RJ alluded to, expensive paywalls, and this was the first weekend on BT Sport where they started advertising the channel as the home of bikes. Because for those who don't know, in the UK, BT Sport are soon to be no more. They are in a merger with the people you might know as the Discovery Network.
No.
That's right. Another booming success from David Zaslav. Thanks, buddy.
No,
you're the best.
I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Dre.
Let me educate you on some shit. Yeah, so basically, BT Sport has been actively trying to sell itself for 2 or 3 years now. And it was announced late last year that they are going to be merging with the Discovery Network, aka Warner Brothers. For those who don't know,
aka the entity which has been pillaging and burning all of its IPs to the ground to use as tax write-offs.
Oh yeah.
My face right now is that of the angry video game nerd drinking Rolling Rock on the Rollin' Rocker.
Yeah, it's a lot of shit. Quick history lesson. Before 2013 was, I believe, the last year, and this was Marc Marquez's debut season in the top flight. It was the last year. It was the last year that we had MotoGP on free-to-air television because we had. It was limited coverage, but we got every race free-to-air on BBC Two, every TV in the country, every Sunday. About 1 million people a weekend would watch, plus whoever was on Eurosport, because there was also Eurosport's coverage. The home of bikes, i.e. more like bicycles, you may know from the Tour de France and other such sports, a lot of tennis and a lot of snooker was on Eurosport as well. But that was where the legendary commentary duo of Toby Moody and Julian Ryder was. Eurosport was the kings of biking coverage. BT Sport bought the rights out in 2014, and MotoGP's active audience in the UK went down by about 80%. Don't get me wrong, BT Sports coverage is generally very good. They give you everything, which is something that other networks didn't do. They cover every session live. They have their own rolling panel of pundits. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm not the biggest fan of it all. I've been critical of it in the past in certain areas like conflicts of interest, because they have Michael Laverty as a pundit when he owns a Moto3 team. And I've always...
Certified Dale Earnhardt Jr. moment.
Yeah, well, 100%. And, it's a bit awkward and conflicting and hypocritical to have a team owner as a pundit, Sylvain. And I love Sylvain Guintoli. He was an active test rider for Suzuki at the time as a pundit too. And I've always thought that in itself was a bit awkward. But as said, they are going to merge all of Eurosport into what will now be known as TNT Sports later this year. And we saw the first advertisements this weekend for calling BT Sport the home of bikes, and they actively plugged the British Superbike Championship starting next weekend, which is being streamed exclusively on the Discovery Plus app, i.e., like every other streaming service you get these days. It's on, games consoles, skyboxes, you name it, smart TVs, you get the gist. It means that if this holds up, all of the big three, MotoGP, World Superbikes, and British Superbikes, will be under the same umbrella, and they'll all be behind the paywall. This is dreadful news for the sport's growth in this country. And I think even the Americans will admit Britain is one of the biking countries of the world.
The biggest boys club on planet Earth when it comes to motorcycle racing.
Oh yeah,
but you don't need me to tell you that the easiest way to kill any growth that anything has is to shrink its potential audience.
Right.
Formula One on Sky Sports could get away with it because Formula One just has so much more inertia behind it than MotoGP doesn't.
But RJ, Formula One didn't get away with it because viewership has gone down.
Yeah. Formula One was on free-to-air in the UK from 1997 all the way until 2012. Like, we were spoiled. We had it on ITV from, 97 to 08. The BBC had it for 3 or 4 years. Then eventually Sky opened up their entire exclusive 4th channel. This is before Sky had 11 channels. This is when they had 3 and an extra, and then they thought, we're going to open a whole ass channel just for Formula One. Snagged every key figure you can think of, right? And the sports audience went down. We went from F1 races peaking at over 10 million to 2 million being considered a good day in the UK. And Cam's right. We didn't get away with it because we were dying for the sport to get a shot in the arm until DTS rolled up.
Yeah, we're forgetting about it now because we are in a boom period with F1 because FOM, to their credit, has dumped an enormous amount of effort and money into marketing the sport anywhere they can.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They can market the sport in a way that Dorna cannot.
But even then, they're still not back to that critical mass that they used to be.
Right, and BT Sport is a very, very overpriced network. It is £30 a month. It is the same price as Sky Sports right now. You can get it cheaper if you're an EE phone customer because EE owns them. BT Sport stands for British Telecoms. They also own EE as a phone network. So if you're a customer with them, there are deals and workarounds to potentially get it cheaper, right? But face value, it's £30 a month, right? That's the same price as Sky Sports. Sky Sports is objectively a much better value for money product at the same price than BT Sport has ever been. Sky Sports has the Premier League, which for most Brits is basically like lifeblood. It's like blood, oxygen, and Premier League football, right? In that order, in ascending order. So BT Sport really has got, as a network, MotoGP, a bit of rugby, a bit of tennis, some American sports right here and there, like baseball, for example. But its overall package is nowhere near as good as Sky's, in my humble opinion. You are going to kill a lot of growth for bike riding in this country, which, by the way, is already struggling, in terms of generating prospects and harvesting talent. Britain is falling behind Italy and Spain quite badly at the moment. You're not going to gain any fans by going behind even more paywalls. And
they're just chasing the short-term gains. And
and Dorna recognizes this. It's why they've actively tried flipping partial rights to races to free-to-air channels. Remember last year I talked about how ITV got 2 races last year. Like ITV1 got a MotoGP race on every TV in the country, and no one watched it because ITV didn't plug it. They put it right in that British touring car weekend Sunday afternoon time slot, and no one cared. It makes me sad, but it's one of the many issues I have with MotoGP as a sport. And this one isn't even really on Dorna's fault. It's the logistics and the very nature of where, sports broadcasting is at the moment, where they feel like they've got to own everything.
This problem is far from exclusive to MotoGP.
100%.
However, we're talking about it because MotoGP has leaned all the way into it.
Yep. And they're now trying to reverse the damage, and it might be too late for that.
What's
it's a shame. Yeah, go on.
We've gone this far in the podcast. We mentioned Fabio Quartararo once.
Yeah, because he finished 8th in the Grand Prix and no one cared.
Jesus Christ. The Yamaha are so toast.
Yeah, Frankie Morbidelli was last of all the riders that saw the flag, and Fabio Quartararo was 8th and still couldn't pass anybody.
Yeah, his lap times were okay, but what Yamaha has done in the way they've put this year's bike together, they've sacrificed their 1-lap pace for race pace, which means that they don't even have any positions to lose now.
What a mess of a weekend this was, and it's
every good aspect was immediately balanced by something horrific.
Indeed, we'll wrap this up and get out of here. Just to say that, this was like I said, the Grand Prix was fine. The sprint was genuinely great, but I'd
barely call the Grand Prix fine.
It was decent. I gave it a 6 on my race review, and I thought, looking back at it, I might have been a bit generous, but I think 6 is about right. So Johan Zarco was worth an extra point, quite frankly.
This is the first time that anyone has ever said those words in that order.
I know. First time for everything.
What I'd say is worth an extra point as my last point? Gino Ray is back in a motorcycle paddock. You know him as the FCC TSR Honda rider who nearly died in practice at the Suzuka 8 Hours. He is back in the paddock, smiling and having the time of his life.
Respectfully, how the fuck?
He's
so
back
good to see that man back.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
Wonderful to hear. Wonderful.
Let's leave it on that.
Yeah, a positive note. It's a shame that we have to talk about bike racing in such an up and down, catastrophic sort of way, because the potential is so great. But, it is nice to leave on a positive note, certainly. MotoGP is back this weekend. It is a back-to-back weekend. We will have Argentina this weekend. As mentioned, no Marc Marquez, no Miguel Oliveira, no Enea Bastianini, and, of course, no Pol Espargaro. As time of recording, Marquez will not be replaced. We don't know about the other 3 just yet. We'll have to wait and see. And of course, on behalf of all of us here, get well soon, Pol Espargaro in particular, because that was a horror crash. And the good news is he will make a full recovery, and that is wonderful to hear. But my God, I hope I don't have to have another conversation about that and bike racing again anytime soon. I'm Andre Harrison. He's been Cam Buckley and RJ O'Connell. You know where you can find us. Thanks for watching. Sayonara.
Later, y'all.
Oh.
That's your post-credit bit right there. That's just deep sighs into the
just a deep sigh. That's how I feel right now. I'm speaking how I feel.